Today I am joined by I'm very happy to say, very good friend, Mr. Chris England from
Hello.
PVS, Property Video Solutions, but PVS Media now, as we know you, right?
Yeah, yeah. We rebranded a couple of years ago.
It's a beautiful rebrand. And look, I'm gonna just out the elephant in the room from the beginning. First of all, very festive background. You've got your Christmas jumper on. I've got my whole Christmas thing going on in the background.
Big fan.
Um, but the elephant in the room is that PVS has been there since day dot, really, with this industry. In fact, very first of the agency conferences that I ever attended, I think that's where I met yourself and Matt. And you are let's face it, a fixture. You almost been part of the furniture for many years. So much so you wouldn't even know they're there sometimes.
Yeah,
But you are prolific. You're filming everywhere. You are the brains behind and the technology behind bringing Christopher Watkin to our screens every
he, he,
day, every
he,
minute, it seems.
he's our fault. We
He's,
would say
he
that
is
he's our
definitely
fault.
your fault.
I
Um,
love him. Let's be clear. I love him, but he
it,
is. But
it is that.
we've grown together. That's what we would say. And since I met him, I think I've also grown because he's like,
Yeah,
oh,
well,
do you
well,
want to
you
grab a
do.
beer?
In this weather, you need to eat enough. So
Yeah.
that's true.
So yeah, no. Yeah. Well, that's very kind of you. I mean, yeah. So yeah, we worked in property for the better part of a decade now. We're 9 years old in June. So next year we'll be planning our 10-year anniversary party, which is a weird thing to say. Like when you start a business, you don't necessarily expect it to survive for the better part or a complete decade because the numbers aren't in your favor when you set up a business to survive
With
for too long.
longevity, and there's a number of different things that go into that, isn't there? There's relationships because obviously a business is a family, and it can be lovely when it clicks right. And if you don't mind me saying, I think you've got the right sort of click over there.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
You and Matt complement each other very well, but not just that. Your whole team are just thoroughly the loveliest people you could ever to meet.
To be honest, they make me look good, is what we would say. So when Matt and I started the business, we had a number of skills, and we had an aspiration to sort of become well known or the most well known or the best in in the sectors that we sort of chose to work in, and property being the predominant one for us. Um, and yeah, and as we've gone on, we've got to a point now where the people that work with us, a lot of them are better people, better camera people than we are. I'm a professional photographer, a professional cameraman, a trained journalist. That's where my skill lies. I'm a marketing professional. I worked in news. I worked in government communications.
Wow.
I've got a master's degree in PR. I know. Would you believe it?
Are you
Right?
listening to this,
Yeah.
Russell Quirk?
Would
Are
you
you
believe
listening?
it?
He's got a
Would you believe it?
master's in PR.
Would you believe it? Right. But in reality, my skills lie more in that journalistic side and photography, and I was an adequate cameraman. But we've got some incredible professionals who work with us now in our team. Amazing editors, animators. And you're right. Conferences are where people will see us, but we're working behind the scenes with brands
And
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 names.
and that's the thing. Other than guessing if you see a really professional video for an estate agent, and some of the great content that they're pushing out, other than guessing it's PVS, it doesn't say produced by PVS Media at the beginning,
No,
because you are the unsung heroes. You sit behind that agent's brand and you help them to tell the stories. And I think that's really what you've sort of, if you had to sum it up, right, you're helping us to to become
yeah,
storytellers
it's
because that
stories. Yeah, it's stories. Because I mean, look, you can do a number of things yourself. You can use these things.
Yeah.
You can hire in other people to do things. You can do social content. You can do all sorts of stuff, reasonably inexpensively. But when it comes to brand, and actually making something that will stand the test of time, not so much disposable content, so more things that will have longevity.
Evergreen
That's
stuff.
when you might want to consider getting a company in to do that stuff for you. And that's what we've kind of excelled at, and my team has excelled at really for, you know, this is the last, almost the last decade really. But what's exciting for us is new technologies, moving things forward, thinking about VR space, AR space. 360 is moving at a pace now. We've got some exciting new contracts outside of property with 360 stuff. But the nice thing for us is we're not, whilst we work in property and we've worked in property for, as I say, a long time, we also work in manufacturing, recruitment, finance, legal, insurance, graphics. We're working with some big blue chip companies that we can't talk about as well. We're also in the running to help produce an actual movie for cinema next year. Like
Oh
actually,
wow.
working with a producer on an actual
Is
film.
the
Um,
hotly anticipated Chris Watkin biopic?
no, sadly not. It's got some big name actors in it. I can't talk about it yet, but it's cool. It's in pre-production. We're about 50% of the funds are raised, so we're hoping next year to shoot an actual movie. So, but the nice thing about that is we're able to use those experiences and use that knowledge and all those other things and bring them back in to smaller, or not necessarily smaller, but SME businesses, within the property space that might not have thought about X, Y, and Z, because a lot's always leveled at Matt and I, excuse me, because we were never estate agents. Let's be frank. Well, I'll be Frank. You can be David. But I've never been an estate agent. That's the thing, right? We've worked in property and making property content for nearly 10 years. We know a lot about property. We know a lot about the market. We keep ourselves really up to date with everything that's going on industry wise. We've worked with you, we worked with Kerfuffle, we've worked with Ran, and we've worked with you on a number of projects, David. You know that our knowledge about the industry is there, but we can't pretend that we were ever estate agents. But
But
where we add
they
value,
now, as a result of being involved with the state agency and filming the content and helping to bring those stories to life, inadvertently you found yourself in that ecosystem and you've probably absorbed more estate agency knowledge than most trainee estate agents, right?
I mean, I would not say that I was, that I'm anywhere near the level of professional that a lot of the industry people that we meet and know. But could I do the role could I do a job swap for a day as a junior neg
I
or a
think
valuer
you
maybe?
could. I think you could.
Maybe.
Anybody
Junior,
interested in
like
having
really junior.
Chris for a day, just let me know. That's our secret Santa prize of
I mean, that would be a fun day out, right? Just,
that'd be
I wonder if
great
I'd sell a
day.
house. I wonder if I'd sell a house. I'm trustworthy. Like,
I'm
but no,
sure I'm sure you would.
excuse me. But no, the key thing for us is that we bring a lot of cross-industry knowledge, obviously media, camera proficiency, and we're all trained camera people. All my team have got degrees in film. A lot of them have worked on sort of big projects, and I think that's where certainly when we've worked with clients like Kerfuffle and Ran, where initially, actually one of the best days was early doors with Simon Whale, and initially he was going to just hire someone in to do some camera stuff, and we went to London for a day and we did some interviewing with Spencer Lawrence from Paramount, and Adam, um, yeah, and basically some pieces to camera. And I was just sort of off camera, sort of guiding some of the questioning and helping Simon and sort of say, "I'll ask that question. You've not followed that up, or you've not done that." Not but just in a helpful sort of way. And at the end of the day, we're getting a taxi back, and he went, "Yeah, I just don't think I'd get the same value from someone who's just a camera person."
Yeah.
someone who would just turn up and go, what are we making? We just have hired a cameraman for the day to come and do something like what are we doing? I think it's difficult actually. I think people ask us a lot of the time, like why, what kind of your USPs are and what your or your UCBs, if you like Tony Morris, your unique client benefit.
Yeah.
And I think it's having trained journalists who are also cameramen and media professionals helping to drive those narratives and those stories. And certainly when you're interviewing and doing those questions. And that's, the only thing I can take credit for with Chris Watkin, because the rest of it is all him. Don't blame me. All right. But what I can take some credit for is in the early days of Chris's interviews in the sofa and those sorts of things, he wasn't actively listening. So when you're a journalist, you need to actively listen to the responses that have been given by your interviewee. And he sort of had a list of questions and he would ask his questions top to bottom. And it's what effectively young journalists and cub reporters do. They have a list of questions and they ask one question after the next, after the next, after the next. So they don't get a load of shit off of their news editor, basically, because
Yeah.
they've asked all the questions, right? But, if I said to you, David, talk to me about this new project, what's it going to do? This new bit of software. You say, oh, this new bit of software is going to be unbelievable. It's going to allow agents to track and measure this, that, and the other. It's costing us £500,000 to put it in, but it's going to give, over the long term, it should see as a £5 million return on investment, blah, 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 right? If my next question is, oh, how much is it costing you? You'd be like, well,
You've
half a million
missed it.
pounds,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ever. And so where I can take a little bit of it is like encouraging Chris to think more journalistically about his Q&A. And I think that's helped him and that's helped a lot of our customers when they're doing things themselves, because we're massive advocates and always have been of people making their own stuff. When we started, it was about training. That was the first thing we started doing, really, and encouraging people to do stuff, because these things, man, they're so powerful. You can do so much stuff. You can't do everything with these, but you can do so many things. And I would say that when you're a property professional and you've got one of these in your pocket, just getting started and doing some and seeing the return on investment of time, because that's all you're
Yeah.
swapping effectively. And then over the time, that's where we've seen this return and recurring revenue come, where people have made something themselves. It's been okay, but it's had an impact, and they've gone, "Ooh, what would happen if we made something nicer, better, had
More
something for the long
professional.
term?" Yeah.
It's interesting because you run your own podcast, which is
Yeah.
all about video, and it's famously the only podcast I've not been on yet. Yet, I will be coming soon.
Can we
Um,
caveat with the fact that you've been invited 5 times
I
to
have
come
been
on?
invited 5 times. It's never worked out yet, but we will get there. But I think, from the clips that I've been watching and the episodes that I've been listening to, I think that there are several recurring themes when we talk about video in agency. And obviously it forms like that centerpiece of marketing nowadays. But the word trust just keeps coming up time and time and time again. And it almost feels like cliched and almost too simple to be true. But familiarity in our industry, it breeds instructions really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that fundamentally every buying decision, um, every buying decision. So we talk about trust. We talk about the Trust Mountain, or lots of books. Every business development book, there are 50 here or so. We'll talk about know, like, and trust and all that stuff, and everyone will go, "Yeah, I've heard it, I've heard it." But the key bits on the Trust Mountain, those sort of bits there, you've got that know, like, and trust thing, and trust is the key bit before anyone makes a buying decision of any value. So, we're not talking about popping to the shops and buying a loaf of bread, because it doesn't matter whether you go to a Spar, a Netto, Aldi, Sainsbury's, like you can get bread, right? And if you buy a loaf of Warburton's, it's 10p different here or
Yeah.
there, right? We're not talking about consumables. We're not talking about those low tariff items that are just everyday essentials. We're talking about purchases of value. So if you're going to buy yourself a new pair of golf shoes, 150 quid pair of golf shoes, or you're going to
Yeah.
buy yourself a new dishwasher and it's going to cost you 500 quid, Or you're going to buy yourself a new car and it's going to cost you 20 grand. Or you're going to buy yourself, God forbid, a new house and it's going to cost you 500,000 quid. People have a number that is a number where they start caring, right? For most people on middle incomes, it's around 300 quid. It's not the everyday bits that the kids need or whatever. But if your wife said to you, or my wife said to me, oh, I'm going to go and buy this thing, it's 300 quid, I'd go, oh, wait a minute, are you sure that's the best place to buy it? Can you get it
Yeah.
cheaper somewhere else or whatever, right? And then the trust starts to come into it, right? And that when you're making any decisions, buying decisions, it's new double glazing, a house, a car, whatever, you start to sweat that decision making process. Yeah. And that's where your know, like, and trust comes in. Do you know the company that you're buying from? Do you trust that they are going to provide the service, the quality, and the product in the time, frame that you want it? That's why Amazon's so successful, because we know Amazon, whether we like them or not, sort of indifferent, because they deliver tomorrow. We know it will be here. We know it will happen. So we trust. The trust bit there is probably about the right sort of money, and it's going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Then the likability comes in things like, oh, we'll give you Prime Telly for free, and you're like, oh, that's a nice thing for them to do, blah 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 blah. But it just keeps them sticky because they're making money from their subscriptions, right? So the key bit underneath is, how do we get to the trust bit? So we need to start making content that's interesting for people who are our demo, right? So if you're an estate and letting agent, we need to start thinking, right, if I lived in Hammersmith, what do I want to know about? Well, I want to know about the coffee shops. I want to know about the street scene, house prices. I want to know rental values. I want to know if there's an event at the weekend. I want to know what the schools are like, what the pubs are like, whatever, right? I want to know about Hammersmith. If I'm going to move there, I want to know if I live there and I'm thinking about staying there, why do I want to stay? Why do I want to come? Whatever, right? So let's establish what people want to find out. Yeah. Then let's make stuff that's interesting to them so they become interested in you. And then once you've got their eyeballs and you've got their interest, then they can start to know you. They can make a decision whether they like you or not. And if they like you and they've made a decision that they like you, then they might start trusting you, and then they'll spend some money, right? But people get it twisted. I think the pyramid's wrong, right? So, and I changed it in my training. So you've got the know, like, and trust, and you've got the make content. They make interesting stuff. They'll become interested. Then they'll know you, like you, trust you. The trust bit, everyone always talks about the trust being when they part with cash.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I'm going to spend money with them, so I trust them, whatever. Now, I think that top bit should be split, and the trust bit should be split into 50% revenue, 50% referral.
Yeah.
Because fundamentally for us, the reason our business has been successful, right? The reason it's been successful is fundamentally because people have referred us and recommended us. The money bit from the client, is great. We always try and do the best value, try and be as affordable as possible, whatever. But their money is almost secondary to their favor. I would rather them refer us to 10 people than use us once and go, oh, that was good value.
And that's good. But there's great social value there, isn't there? And it's exponential, because that word of mouth referral, I pass it to 10 people, 10 people then pass it to more people. And really, they all tend to be, we all operate locally, don't we? So those people are exactly your audience, they're exactly who you want to be spreading the message of the work that you do. And I think that a lot of agents miss it. Some people are still sort of dismissing whether or not video works, and whether it's fun. And almost as the more professional it gets, so you see a lot of sort of professionally produced, I would say, marketing videos. I think that's what it is. There's an awful lot out there as well in the supplier sector of people sort of talking to agents of, this is what you should be doing, and this is what success looks like. And strutting down the high street and generally looking as good as you possibly can. But let's face it, life isn't like that every day. And yeah, we try and capture people on their best day, but content is about constantly churning out a message and
I think
constantly.
I think there's a place for everything, right? So I've seen some really good content, of sort of glossy things, and that's great. And I've seen some really cool adverts and stuff. Um, I've seen some amazing stuff. Like, we've made some amazing stuff, but like I've seen some really good stuff that's come out of various different places. Um, but I think there's no real one trick pony. Like you have to have a spread. What I know to be true is that trying to actively sell to people is a massive turnoff, right? So actively trying to go out there and go, you should buy from me, buy today, 50% off, buy, like DFS style, whatever. And yeah, look, DFS are a massive brand and they've always had a sale on since I was like a baby, right? So like some people it will just remind them, oh, DFS, we need a new sofa, let's go have a look. They've got a sale on, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But you should split your content down, really. We talk about 80-20 split. So having 8 of 10 posts should be information, advice, support, whatever. Our podcast is a really good example of that. So our podcast is just advice. There's no sales in there. It's all about trying to encourage people to think about visuals, how they could do it themselves. We've done mic reviews, we've done interviews with leaders about how they got started with videos, some amazing podcast interviews with some really top level CEOs in property and not property, business professionals of all types, shapes and sizes, talking about why why visuals work. You mentioned that people are still sort of thinking, oh, is it faddy? Is it going to work? And I'm like, well, like TikTok's a thing, Instagram's a
Yeah.
thing, Facebook's a thing. Like, these things aren't going away. What is interesting is some of the new technologies that are coming out on the back of AI around phones. There's some companies that are producing. I don't know if you've seen the Claude.
Yes, I've seen
So
that. So
AI,
that for people
AI.
who don't know what that is, I liken it to almost like a black box recorder.
Yeah,
It will record. So if you're at a conference, you click a button, it instantly begins recording. It transcribes what it hears as well, and it
yeah.
just makes it more usable, right?
Yeah, and it will give you action notes. So great if you put it in the middle of a team meeting on the desk, it will take each individual person, it will tell you which action points for each person and split everything down, information outputs, outcomes, actions, whatever, right? But there's some of the phone companies are starting to make new devices that look like that. So you don't have a screen so much. It's just all works on voice. So that'll be interesting to see, excuse me, what that looks like in the market. People are spending a lot of time tapping it's happening. But actually, if you don't have the screen, would you spend more time not with your phone? Do you know what I mean? And just
Yeah,
have it
possibly.
I mean, I use the voice activation stuff with ChatGPT. I've renamed my ChatGPT because it's a lady to Zoe. So
Yeah,
I now chat to Zoe and I ask her questions about everything. And I use it now a bit like Google if I'm trying to find. I'm in the car and I'll say, "Hey Zoe, can you just?" I was watching Landman on Paramount. I was like, "How long has oil been a thing?" Like whatever, and she sort of told me about the guy who drilled the first well and the rest
yeah,
pre drilling in the 1800s. It was oil wasn't a thing. It was only things that were naturally pooling on the top of in
yeah,
China and stuff, and they'd find oil and they'd use it. It was only when they drilled the first one that we started to have this massive industrial oil revolution with the combustion engines and all that sort of stuff and refining and all that sort of stuff. So really, it's only been the last couple of 100 years or so that we've been able to drill and get all the oil out, and then we'll run out in 50 years and we'll all be knackered. So it's a funny sort of game, right? But that I'm using it in that way, maybe because I'm technologically minded, but my dad, who's 70, would do that because he'd talk to it because it's easier for him than doing the typing,
yeah. From
right?
looking at the screen,
So
and it's one of those things about AI at the moment that fascinates me is that the younger the generation, so my kids, and I presume your kids, sort of that generation of people, they can spot when something's AI or fake, and they're not very trusting of it.
they don't
The
like
old,
it. My kids hate it.
yeah, they hate it. The minute they see
Yeah,
something that they, oh no, that's
right.
AI, and they dismiss it straight away because
Yeah.
they don't want to be duped. And what's interesting is that the older generations, the people of my parents' generation, 60s plus, put them all into that bracket. Forgive me, everybody. But they are, funnily enough, very trusting of AI because this is almost miracle technology. I mean, it knows everything
Yeah.
about me. It knows how I want to talk.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I had over the summer I took my phone to well because it was with me to my mum and dad's, and just mentioned ChatGPT. My dad's retired; he's 70 odd. Um, I mentioned it, and he said, "What does it do then?" And I said, "Oh, it'll tell you anything you want to know." He went, "Like what?" I went, "Well, what do you want to know? Information that is available in the world.
Yeah,
Anything that you could possibly think of, it's probably got an answer for you." It was like, I said, "Well, you've heard of the internet." He's like, "Well, of course I've heard of the internet." I said, "Well, imagine the internet, but imagine the internet talking to you, effectively that." And he was like, "I don't really get it." So I put my phone on the outside table and I said, "All right, Zoe." And it went, "Hi, Chris, how you going?" Because it knows me because I've got
yeah,
the account and I've done stuff for work. And I said, "Zoe, just give us a bit of background about PBS Media and whatever." And it's like, and she said, "Sure." PBS Media is a media company. It was established in 2017. It's owned by Chris England and Matt Lee, operating Grantham, predominantly in the property space, but you also work in this, and this. Some of your recent projects include that. There's a podcast last week on making video your business about X. That's on YouTube now. If you want a link, let me know. And it just all this other stuff. And my dad was like, "That is creepy." And I said, "Oh, it's information that's publicly available on the internet, and therefore it's just referencing this stuff and spitting it out into something that's digestible by my human brain." And he said, "Well, ask it something more complicated." I said, "Well, what do you want to know?" And he said, "I'll get it to sum up the plot of Hamlet in a limerick." I was like, "No problem." So I did that and gave me that.
yeah,
And he was like, "That's unreal." And I said, "Ask it about this battle in the Second War," because my dad's a former RAF,
yeah,
um, massive historian kind of guy. He said, "Ask it about," excuse me, he said, "Ask it about this um, thing." And I was like, "God, it's perfectly accurate." I'm like, "Yeah, because that information's on the internet." So of course it's going to be accurate. But honestly, it was like I'd invented fire showing him this.
yeah,
And that's, but now he's sort of aware of it. He's like, "Oh, it's really quite useful." And it's a bit like, I can imagine people do this probably already. But I can imagine like cooking with Zoe, and going, "Oh, Zoe, I want to make a carbonara, but from scratch.
yeah.
Can you help me with that? Can we do it together?" And I can imagine like almost like an online, like, you're cooking with Zoe. And you're like, "Oh, I put the eggs in now, Zoe. Great. Well, now you put the eggs in. Make sure you give that a good whisk. Let me know when you've done that." I'm like, "Cool." And then the next step and the next step. And you don't need a screen for that. You can just talk to it.
But just getting back to what it is that you do, but linking those two ideas together, I think in what we do know then is in an age where, you know, what should be pointed out is that Zoe or ChatGPT or any kind of AI is, the caveat is it's only as good as the information it's got
Yeah.
available. It does make mistakes. Sometimes it does get the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah.
It might not be quite as clever as we think it is. It is emerging technology and it's still evolving at a rate of knots, absolutely. But in a world where we are unsure as to what's real, we're seeing a lot of videos being produced, for instance, where I mean, I'd like to think that I can spot most of those AI videos that are just a little bit out of time, a little bit dodgy. The movements are still a little bit inhuman, but they're getting better and better and better. Um, we're going to have a problem as human beings, in as much as we're going to have lots of fake stuff out there that has
Mm.
been computer generated.
Yeah.
And we still, somewhere deep down inside, don't trust that. There will never
I
be
think,
this
yeah, I think that's the
absolute
case.
trust.
Yeah. I think that is the case. I think it's a question I get asked quite a lot. Are you worried about AI? And I always say, "Have you seen the Terminator?" So yeah, I'm terrified.
And
But
it's
no,
worth pointing out that the Terminator is just one film in a whole load of pop culture.
ah,
But we have been writing books well, long before film became a thing. We've been writing books about the dangers of technology, and
yeah,
the artificial intelligence, the computer, you go back to something like 2001 Space Odyssey and things like that. All of these things, we've got a whole narrative, haven't we? We've got a whole culture that is built on a
Yeah.
distrust
But
of what's going to
you can
happen
go
when this
back to all
technology goes
sorts,
wrong.
mate. There's all sorts. I mean, look at Jules Verne.
Yeah, yeah.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Submarines. Da Vinci sort of, I think, pioneered a small underwater thing. But you've got Jules Verne, you've got George Orwell, who ostensibly invented CCTV. And I think you know science fiction inevitably becomes science fact because people go, oh, we could probably make that. Although I am still missing my power lace up Nikes and
Oh,
my hoverboard.
from Back to the
But
Future.
it
Yeah,
was promised.
yeah.
It was promised in 1985 that it would be happening by
I'm
2015.
still waiting for a
No hoverboard.
hoverboard. I want
No
my
hoverboard. No
hoverboard.
flying cars.
Yeah.
No flying cars. I mean, I think there is one, but not like everywhere. So look, so some things take longer, right? But I think the AI from a video perspective, you can look at. I mean, my mate Toby Martin, right?
Yeah.
You could ask Toby and say, oh, AI. And he said, oh, well, look at the Coca-Cola advert. They did that for Christmas, and that's gone out, and no one's upset about it, and whatever, other than like Puritans going, "Where's my real holidays are coming truck?" And I've gone, yeah, there are inconsistencies with the video, and he's gone, yeah, but who cares? And I've gone, well, not lots of people, but it took Coca-Cola 50,000 renders
To
to
get it
build
right.
that, to get that sort of right, or as right as they were prepared to put on the television,
Yeah.
which I think was just an experiment to see whether they could. But the cost of rendering 50,000 clips isn't inexpensive. So actually, would it have been cheaper just to run last year's advert? Or like, do you see what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
things will get cheaper, economies of scale, that sort of stuff.
Well,
But,
it's not
you know,
just about the cost. I actually think that video has a role to play in, especially for estate agents, in actually cutting through all that AI generated crap.
mm,
Because if you can get yourself in front of a camera and that camera can actually pick up all your ums and ahs and your little stumbles that you'll make as you're walking through a property or whatever it may be, I think customers are going to find that to be more authentic. I think
yeah,
that we inevitably get a little bit, we'll get to the point where we get a little bit bored with looking at AI avatars because they're too perfect.
I
Um,
think you're right. I think you're right. I think people say, "Oh, are you worried?" I'm like, not really, because look, Synthesia, HeyGen, go and have a look at those guys if you want to get yourself an AI avatar, an AI twin. They are getting better.
yeah,
The mouth movements and the sound still doesn't quite, it's not quite perfect yet. It will improve. It was terrible. It's better and better and better. But what it can't do is physically go. So, I mean, yet, obviously we say yet, but like it can't do, we go back to that trust mountain. We talk about making stuff that's interesting to people. The AI can't go to your local coffee shop in your local town or village or wherever or borough, go and interview Daniel, who's opened it, talk to him about his cake or whatever. It can't go to the RAN conference and talk to delegates about how buzzing they've had for the day,
yeah,
whatever. It can't do those things. Like imagine, you talk about ChatGPT has really hurt like copywriters. It has. We can pretend, but it has. Marketing professionals are using ChatGPT all the time to make content, and people aren't using as many copywriters as they used to. I get CVs all the time saying, "Have you got any
sure.
work?" And I'm like, "No." But what it can't do is chat can't go to a war zone and document. It can't do it. Anything that's already happened, sure. Anything happening now, no. It just can't do it. It can't do things that are of the minute. So it won't replace journalists, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to think of yourself as a business owner, regardless of industry, as a media business, as a journalist, as a creator of content, and stuff that's already been made. It's a bit like rewatching Star Wars. Great, love it. But I'd sooner watch a new one.
Yeah.
because I've already watched that one 50 to 100 times. I might have seen A New Hope.
You have to keep reinventing yourself, basically.
Yeah, and I think, and also trends change, and content changes. What was cool a while ago. We're looking at some new camera angles and stuff that the BBC have been using, and there's other things. Oh, that's cool. We'll borrow that. We'll have that. And chat, and AI hasn't done that yet. You know what I mean? It can't think what might be appealing. What cosmetically might be better, might be appealing. Whatever, or track it. I mean, it can track trends, obviously. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it's an interesting time to be alive. But then, so was the age of the mobile phone. So was the dot-com boom. So was the internet in '97. When Tim Berners-Lee set us all running on the internet,
Yeah.
it was dial-up and no broadband, and mobile phones didn't exist, and really, it was all pages. Remember pages?
So
You still got one of them?
So let me ask you about something else that I picked up on the other day. So
Yeah,
we've got to the point where we used to go to conferences before the day of AI. We used to go to
yeah.
conferences and people used to be going on about personal brand the whole time. And now if you mention personal brand, people go, oh, personal brand, personal brand. But that annoys me. That dismissiveness annoys me because it's ever more important today for all the reasons we've already spoken about than ever before.
Yeah.
Um, but there is that sort of there's a dilemma that as business owners sometimes as how much of that personal brand do we push? How much of the company brand do we push? And do we, by pushing one, do we damage the other? And are we not giving them, should we be giving them equal footing? I saw a question online today. Somebody asked whether or not some people talk about their kids. Some people feature their kids in various bits of content, and they feel conflicted about it because they don't know whether they're, in essence, I think the question they're really asking is, am I using my kids for my own kind of personal gain? But you've, if you don't mind me to turn into something personal, anybody that knows you and your family will know what you guys have been through over the past couple of years. You're very open about it, and you've both posted independently of one another, both you and Michelle, about the journey that you've been on. And to me, that makes me feel like I know you guys better, makes you feel like you're more human as well, because we relate to those sort of things and we gain strength, don't we, from sharing those experiences. So the highs and the lows and the ups and the downs, especially when people are going through times of illness and so on. But people don't know how much of that to reveal in personal brands. So do I put a gate up at some point and go, you can come this far, but no further. You can't know about all of this stuff that's going on behind the scenes. As somebody who's almost sort of lived it quite openly, what's your advice to people?
I think you have to be. Um, I think you have to just be comfortable. I think the key thing for me is obviously Michelle was unwell. Um, it was a shock because if you were going to put me and her in a lineup, you know, slim, non-drinking, non-smoking, non-drug taking, athletic, dog walking, daily dog walking wife versus beer swilling, overweight, ex-smoker
But
Chris.
tremendously good looking.
Thank you, darling. But if you put us together and you said, if you do an eeny, meeny, miny, mo, who's going to be the one who gets cancer? I would probably not have picked her.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, it's luck of the draw. Um, but what I would say is that was led by her, not by me. Whilst I was a passenger on that journey, I wasn't driving. I was the support network, and the kind of the parent trying to keep the wheels on the truck
Yeah.
effectively. I was the pit crew. She was Lando Norris, and she navigated it brilliantly. And I think the human aspects of business and the human aspects, like we've not had an easy run. Like it's all well and good saying, "Oh, it's, oh, it must be great. And I get that a lot. Like, oh, it must be great. I'm like, it's okay, but running a business in any climate is difficult. The current,
Yeah.
state of the political landscape has been problematic for SME business. The previous government didn't help as much either,
Yeah.
to be fair.
And
Like,
and and you're an
uh,
SME business that is dealing with other SME businesses. So when they
correct,
feel the cold,
correct.
you sneeze,
We
and
feel
that's
the
what
cold, yeah,
happens. Yeah.
and that's what happens. So that's not helping. But in addition to that, we've had a couple of years of COVID to navigate. We had a break-in where we were cleaned out. We were robbed at an event in London. We've
Yeah.
had flooding. We've had flooding in the offices. We've
Yeah.
had, all sorts of traumatic, sort of potentially business-ending catastrophes that we've had to navigate, coupled with Michelle, who's our head of finance, becoming unwell. So, but I think telling people those things, letting people in, a bit Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, it makes you more human. It makes you more relatable. We're all just trying to. I say this all the time, like, because people ask about competition, they ask about other people. And I'm like, look, these people, they're just trying to feed their children. They're trying to pay their mortgages, they're trying to feed their children, and they're just doing the best job they can possibly do for as long as they can hang on to the reins. And I think, the personal brand part, rightly or wrongly, people want to know you. It goes back into the trust bit. If I was some suit wearing aloof guy, wouldn't feel particularly creative. The fact that I'm wearing a Christmas jumper, most people have probably never seen me in a tie, unless it's been a black tie do that I've been invited to, whatever. I think people expect their creatives to be a bit more
Funky.
colourful.
Yeah.
Colourful, yeah. I like a gross shirt, all right. But people warm to that. I think you want your accountant to look a certain way. You want your solicitor to look a certain way. You want your doctor to be in a white coat.
Yeah.
But you might want your plumber to turn up in like overalls. If your plumber turned up in, my best mate's a gas man, so
If you
I like
turned
to
up in
use
a
it.
three-piece suit, you'd
It'd
be
be
you'd be
weird.
like,
Yeah, but also equally, it would be really off-putting to me if he turned up in very clean trousers, because
yeah.
I'd be like, "How long have you been doing this job?" Not that you want your doctor to turn up in blood-covered whatever, but you know what I'm saying?
But
Like, yeah,
that's about almost authenticity, isn't it? And being
yeah.
comfortable in that. So you
And
mentioned,
that's what personal brand is. Personal
yeah,
brand is just that. All it is being authentic. And you can tell people, you can let people in a little chink of the door, or you can just swing the door open and go, "This is who we are." But I mean, I don't share everything on the internet. If people look at my social channels, it's very much um, a lot of work stuff. A lot of
yeah.
work stuff. Some, a lot of golf. I like golf. Um, but I think I just I like people. Sometimes people like me, and that's great.
Let me ask you another question. Talk about people liking, and you talked about competition before. Estate agents have had to deal with competition over the years. It's one of the things you obsess about in your early days in the estate agency business. You're always measuring and comparing yourself to not necessarily what you need as a business and what your goals are. You're constantly looking at what the other fella's doing and trying to sort of keep up with them. And in the long run, that's probably a mistake. I think you've got to have an awareness of where your competition's at. But I don't think you can afford to get sort of bitter or jaded by it. We've seen a lot. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, but there's been a little bit of supplier fisticuffs going on LinkedIn recently with different CRMs and different AML providers all sort of having a bit of um a, a fight over honesty and truthfulness and all that sort of stuff and at the end of the day I look at it and I think God, it's a bit childish. We're all going to come away looking not so great if you engage like that. But the truth is, a lot of us struggle with competition. you guys, I wouldn't say you've been competition free the whole time, but you've been relatively dominant in the space. There are different people doing different things now. Um, how do you then use that as somebody who's established? So to turn it into agency terms, if I'm a market leader and I've used to be having that bigger slice of the right move pie every month when, we look at instructions coming in, all of a sudden there are people encroaching on that territory, doing new things, maybe perceived to be slightly funky or whatever it is that they're doing. How do you cope with that? Do you use that as fuel to basically power up your own game? Do you look at, do you take that as an opportunity to look at what you're doing and perhaps reimagine it? What's the advice that you give to people having kind of gone through it yourself?
I think it's a tough one because there's always going to be someone trying to steal your chips, right? There's always going to be a seagull trying to nick your chips,
Yeah.
right? And that's life, right? And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't, there's always someone trying to take something from you, either metaphorically or physically, whatever. Whether that's someone, trying to take more tax off you, or whether it's another business trying to, pinch your customers, whatever, right? But you have to, I look at it in a couple of ways, okay? You can get super bent out of shape about it, um, or you can just be better. I mean, I think the reality of it is, is that you can compare apples and oranges, yeah. You can compare apples and apples, but they're all different, And I think for us, like, yeah, there's some other competitors in the market now, sure, but we don't just work in one market. So sort of shrug a bit and go, well, that's great, and but I go back to be a human being about it. They're trying to pay their mortgage, feed their children, and keep and hang on to their job as long as it's available, right? So I think for me, you need to be aware of your competition. The very first business book I ever read was the Brewdog Business for Punks. I think it's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And they said if you have to market your product and you have to actively really go after selling your product loads, it's in that book. If you have to really, 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 really try and push and sell your product's not good enough. He said you shouldn't need to really flog it. A bit like Tom Panos, if you're an agent, if it's not a hit, switch.
Yeah.
Like if you really having to overly sell it, is it the right product? Is it is it saleable? I think for us, what we've done is we've diversified. We've diversified hard this year. We're experts in property. We've got pedigree in it. We've made everything you could possibly think of pretty much for property professionals, whether that's animated, drone, 360, green screen, on location, event, you name it, we've made it. Yeah. And we're pushing boundaries now in other industries, where we could see huge returns. I mean, if we get a movie in April, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't care. Like, it's a weird one. Like, and I don't mean that in a kind of flippant way, but if you're constantly looking at your competitors, you're almost missing out on opportunities for yourself.
Yeah.
Because people, I feel like, and I've been guilty of it in the past. I've been guilty of it in the past when I had my photography business of local competition and going, oh, they're a bit cheaper, or they're this, or
Yeah.
they're that, whatever. But I just come down on the side of, look, we're who we are. We're quality. We're professionals. You're getting loads of added value in the journalistic stuff, in all these other things, the intangibles. Yeah. In the project planning, in the guidance, in the creation, all of it, right? Um, just I think just drive your own car. Be aware of someone trying to overtake you.
So
But
take that message from Chris England. Be better, not bitter, right?
yeah, be better. Just be better. Use it as an opportunity to improve service, improve, get feedback, find out why. Find out why people are using them. Do some market research. Go after them and say, look, I get that, why did you choose to go in that direction? And people go, well, I like this or I like that. You go, cool, okay, well, we can adopt that. There's a really good The guy, Rory Sutherland. I don't know if anyone's seen him.
Yeah,
Sally
sure,
Lawson.
sure.
Sally Lawson had a photo with him the other day. I love Sally. She's ace. She had a photo with Rory Sutherland, and he was talking about. There's a really great clip where he talks about Michelin-starred restaurants. I don't know if you've seen it, but he talks about the third best Michelin-starred restaurant in the world took his staff to the first best, to the best, so not first best, the best, and then to basically to get the experience to see what they did that was markedly different to him.
Yeah,
And then when he came away, he asked his team. He said, "Oh, what was great? Whatever, whatever." And give me your feedback. And everyone started saying, "Oh, this was great and this was great." And he was like, "Cool. What did they do shit? What were the shit bits? What was the shittest thing they did?" And one guy was like, "Oh, I got looked at like a second class citizen when I asked for a beer because it's a wine restaurant, right?"
yeah,
He was like, "Cool." So he said, "Oh, Dave in the kitchen, he knows his beers. He's our new beer sommelier,
yeah,
right?" And then someone else said, "Oh, the coffee was shit." And I said, "Oh, cool. Well, we'll have a coffee. We'll have a barista on staff, whatever." So then they basically plugged the gaps of where that other company were failing, or not failing, but just it wasn't amazing.
yeah.
Um,
The
and they offered something
inconsistency.
different. Yeah, and the inconsistencies. And you can spend a lot of time. I've seen this a lot with agencies over time. Oh, Darren's done that, so Sue's going to do this. Colin's done this, so Daisy's going to do that, right? Why are you copying? Like, it's boring. Like, if everyone does the same, it's dull, right? So, an easy answer would be your competitor comes to market, they're offering something you're not, and you go, cool, I'm going to match that, I'm going to make it cheaper, I'm going to race to the bottom, and I'm going to do the same thing exactly as them, but I'm going to do it for 100 quid less. And I could do that. But it seems counterintuitive to me because why do I want to dilute my market? And why do I want to race to the bottom on price? Surely we should look at that and go, okay, well, that's the thing they're doing. They don't do this, so let's double down on that. Or, okay, property as a market, it's getting harder because of renters reform. It's getting harder because of £1 million, £2 million, fees on properties, whatever the government decides to conjure up tomorrow, in terms of trying to get more money out of us all, right?
Yeah,
Whatever you want to do, it's getting more difficult. So maybe we keep property in our arsenal, but we go, well, the government don't seem to be overly bothered about solicitors and they've got lots of cash. Why don't we go and have a look at dentists? They've got loads of money. Why don't we look at recruitment or finance or go
yeah.
and make a movie, right? So do you see what I mean? And I think we get bent out of shape about the things that other people are doing and try and copy it. And this is where your fees have come down because everyone's doing the same thing and they're all trying to. And I say, don't just excel at something. Look at someone like Adam Mackay in Story. Look at Perry Power. Look at some of these guys who've gone right marketing. We're just going to double down on all that. We're going to make money out of our marketing. We're going to charge that as extra, and we're going to provide a next level service in that arena so that when people go, how much is the fee? And we go 2%, they go, why? And you go this, and they go, okay, cool. And that's differentiators rather than assimilators.
Okay,
I don't know.
I see that. Yeah. So
I don't know.
you mentioned the word we mentioned marketing. It's the very core of everything that you do. You've got
Mm.
Christopher Watkin there in Grantham. You've got
He lives here.
PVS.
Yes.
Recently, you've had Simon Letbetter moving in as well. Um, Marketing center of the universe. Is that where we see Grantham going?
I mean, it's cheap. So, you know, there's no £2 million price cap here, mate. I don't think there's anything for 2 million quid. Like, I'd be amazed if you could buy a house for £2 million in Lincolnshire. I'd be blown away.
But genuinely, people who are so let's talk about this because it's part of your service. You obviously can do on location stuff, so you'll come to the agent's office or to the houses that
Yeah,
they're marketing, or even just the streets around that area. I've seen you do all of that stuff. Um, but you can also have them at your studios there as
yeah,
well in
yeah, yeah,
Grantham. Grantham
yeah,
is fairly easy to get to, isn't it? It's quite central.
yeah. I mean, you saw me in Manchester the other weekend where I went
Yeah,
to
did.
Gladiators with my children. But yeah, Manchester's a couple of hours, Birmingham's an hour and a half. Leicester's 40 minutes, Nottingham's 30 minutes, Lincoln's 30 minutes. Leeds on the train, East Coast Main Line is Leeds, Newcastle, London, Cambridge, Peterborough, Stevenage. Like, it is really, really commutable because we're on the East Coast Main Line on the A1. It's 58 minutes to King's Cross from Grantham Station. So we are central. We've got customers in Wrexham, Fife, Manchester, London, Cambridge, Oxford. Like, we go all over. So yeah, it is quite straightforward. The great thing about having being in Grantham as well, central, easy for you to get to, but also means that we can afford to have quite extensive studio space. So we can create lots of different looks. So where we excel is obviously we've got 4 or 5 studios, 4 or 5. We've got one. We've got green screen studio, studio at the front, which is multi-use. There's probably 3 or 4 looks in there at least. Our main studio, which is we've got a couple of podcast sets in there, some industrial stuff, some blacks, colorama, everything. So yeah, we've got 3 sort of big studios, and then we've got other spaces that we can borrow. We can use if we need to, and that's great because it means that we can build stuff out for people. So if people want podcasts, or they want a particular look and feel, or they want something that's bespoke to them, we can just tear the studio apart and put it all back together again. There's lots of flexibility with the space we've got, and we hold lots of things for people on. We've got, a store cupboard full of branded stuff for
Yeah.
different agents, and boxes full of props and stuff that they
I've
can just
seen
leave.
2 random penguins hanging around, all sorts of
Yeah,
stuff.
penguins,
Yeah.
all sorts of random stuff. But yeah, we keep stuff here for people, and then that saves them the stress of having it, having carting stuff about. So yeah, it's good. We've got big space, big ideas.
It's been lovely talking to you. It always is. Let me ask you, you're quite into I mean, you've mentioned them, you pointed to them over your shoulder a couple of times. You're into sort of business, what I'd call business philosophy, but you read a
Yeah.
lot of that mindset stuff and sort of business leadership. If there is one piece of advice, one little Christmas gift that you could give to estate agents that's not necessarily video related, but just business related, what's the one trick that we're missing? What's the one thing that you could share with us that we can all take value from?
Think about what your customers want or what you want. Focus on a problem. Focus on a problem and offer a solution. So rather than we always think we know, like, and I've been guilty of it. We're not, I'm no better than anyone else, right? But I was like, oh yeah, that'll work really well. That'll work really well, and it doesn't. And it's because I'm thinking like me. I'm not, from a position of knowing all this stuff, right? And I think I often stand on stages and we're talking about video and training and all that sort of stuff. And I say these things, and I'm like, oh, people know this. Like, why are you saying it? But they don't. Like, they don't. They just don't know. It's like I had a guy in. He's got this amazing new thing. I can't talk about it. There's an NDA, but like it's amazing object, right? And he's part of this world, this RPG D&D sort of world, and I know nothing about that. And he says things, and I go, "What?" And he goes, "Oh, do you not know that?" I'm like, "No, because I've no clue about your thing." And it's like, think of your customers like, here's a really good example, right? The best journalists in the country write for The Sun, okay? Because they have to take a complex scenario like the budget,
Yeah, and simplify.
make
Yeah.
it digestible for people with a reading age of 7 to 11,
Yeah.
okay? That's what we need to do as business people. We need to simplify, not because our customers are uneducated or stupid, but just because we're expert in our fields, and I've probably forgotten more about cameras, focal lenses, like ISO, f-stop, all this other technical bullshit, right?
Yeah.
I've probably forgotten more stuff about cameras, camera bodies, models, makes, whatever, and lenses than you would ever know, that you would ever choose to want to know because it's boring for you, right? But we forget that. We forget that not everyone's expert, and I
So,
think we
I
need to
mean,
talk to people like they're not.
so you're concentrating there on sort of fixing the problem that the customer has, and I think that's fascinating because there's two aspects to it. One is yes, can you know have you got a solution to the problem? You should always come to the party ready to offer that. But the other is believing that you're the solution to the problem. So
Yeah,
you will never meet a surgeon who comes in and goes, yeah. I think I could do that for you. Yeah, I could remove that organ for you. Yeah, and it should mostly go okay, and I could do it for this amount. They are supremely confident because they know it's a life and death situation. But more than that, they've trained and they understand that they are the solution to your problem as the patient. And
yeah,
sometimes with estate agents, when we go in, still, it doesn't matter how seasoned the valuer you are, when you're standing in somebody's living room pitching for that business, you have to believe that you are capable of solving their problem, and that comes across in the delivery of the solution that you get. It's not arrogance, but it's just absolute professional um, confidence that you're
yeah,
able to help them. And I think that
yeah,
is
yeah. I think that's
overlooked
true.
sometimes.
I think it's overlooked. I think, that's where we excel. All of the guys who work with us are trained media professionals. We're qualified, got, proper exams. I know people might not put as much stock in that as they once did. But we're properly trained. Like, we've been communicators, journalists, marketeers. And I know I look great, but I'm 43 now. I know, shock, right?
Unbelievable.
But I've worked in media for 20 years, more than 20 years in every discipline, um, in internal, external communications, in government, in private sector, for business, in sales, in marketing, in news, in TV, in radio. I've done all these other bits and pieces. I've worked with big name brands across the country. And I think that's hard to quantify. I don't we don't talk about that loads because how do you put that on the internet, like on your web page? But when you're looking to work with people, that has value, I think still. I think it still has value.
Yeah,
So tell people that. So when you're, in an estate agency context, if you've done all your qualifications, if you've got lots of, if you are a chartered surveyor, tell people, it
don't keep
has
it a
value.
secret.
Like, people care. Don't hide your light under a bushel, as they say. But yeah, be
Sound
confident. If you're an
advice.
expert,
Sound advice. And on that note, we are going to wish you a very Merry Christmas, Mr. Chris England.
Merry Christmas.
To one and all, we will see you on the circuit as we always do. Um, Big fan of your work. Love to see it sort of going from strength to strength and in all its new iterations. You've got a great team. Very fond of your team. Really nice people to work with, which I think makes a real difference. Thank you very much.
Love you, mate.